evil
All the victims
murderer
were slashed to
lives.
death.
With a knife?
No, it sounds crazy, but it looks like they were killed with a giant pair of scissors.
The giant scissors once again search for prey. A trail of terror stretches across Europe, from Norway to England.
Welcome to another episode of Critical Eye. This episode is going to be a bit different. This time, we're going back in time. I'm going to dig into Clock Tower for the PlayStation 1. In this episode, I will be reviewing my first playthrough of the game, so I will go over story and gameplay elements in more detail than what we're used to from this series. So seeing that this game is over 20 years old, there will be spoilers in this review. Let's begin.
Clock Tower.
Clock Tower for the PlayStation 1 is the second installment in the Clock Tower series. It was developed by Human Entertainment and published by ASC2 Entertainment here in the West. The game was released in the year 1996, the same year as another indie horror game, Resident Evil. Or I say 1996, it was actually released over a period of 2 years, 1996 in the East, 1997 in North America, and 1998 in the EU. I said earlier that this was the second installment of the series, even though it's only called Clock Tower. There was actually another Clock Tower game for the SNES, having released the year prior to the PlayStation 1 game. Its gameplay elements build on a lot of the same things as the PlayStation 1 game does. Since this is an older game, we can actually look at the sales numbers and determine if this was a commercial success or not. And looking at the numbers, it seems it was for 1996 standards. The game sold about 500,000 copies. The director of the game attributed these sales numbers in part because of Resident Evil, which raised interest in the genre as a whole. Well, so what is Clock Tower? Clock Tower is a point-and-click horror game. In the PlayStation 1 game, you take control of either Jennifer Simpson, one of the survivors of the very first Clock Tower game, or Helen Maxwell, a new protagonist, an assistant to a professor of criminal psychology in Oslo, Norway nonetheless. So cool to see a game set in Norway. Helen also adopted Jennifer after the events of Clock Tower for the SNES. The game picks up some time after said game. I don't know if it's ever specified, but there are numerous dates thrown around in the game, so you can probably easily track down the timeline.
Professor Barton. Professor Barton.
The game starts off with you playing a Professor Barton, the only time you play him, where you are trying to recreate memories that Jennifer Simpson has lost regarding the Scissorman murders. Oh yeah, Scissorman. This is the murder of the Clock Tower series. A janky man boy snapping around with scissors. This is where some of the more puzzling gameplay elements of the game is introduced. When you play as Barton, you choose a main character for the rest of the game, but not in a traditional sense. There's no select character screen or anything that you're used to. If you speak to one of your assistants, a guy called Harris Chapman, once, you play as Helen. But if you speak to him twice, you play as Jennifer. This can't be changed after the introduction is over. The game tells you of this decision in no manner, except through hints, which can only be displayed from the main menu as far as I can tell, and you get them throughout the game. So you need to go back to the main menu to find them again. This is how you know you're in for a cryptic adventure with a lot of different branches. 10 of them in fact. There are 10 different endings in this game, 5 for each of the 2 characters. During my very first playthrough, I randomly hopped on as Helen, not even knowing I had a choice to begin with. So chapter 1 with Helen begins after a short prologue of playing Barton, basically just going through the events of the very first game. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the game controls kinda janky. It controls like any other point and click game, but with these types of releases usually being on PC, it's kinda weird controlling a mouse cursor with the D-pad. Analog stick is not an option. It hadn't been invented on the PlayStation yet. I can only think of one other game I played on the PlayStation that was a point and click, and that was Discworld. Anyway, I walk around a bit as Helen at a university where she's working, noticing quite quickly that I have to exhaust every conversation and click on everything to be able to progress from time to time. No biggie, something that you get used to quite fast. Some of the conversations are a bit hard to follow though. They change from letting you read at your own pace to skipping through the text at random times, and when they are skipping, they usually skip faster than my reading tempo. I wish I could always control the pace of the text when the conversation wasn't voice acted. Not the biggest issue in the world, but it would be welcome to have the option. At this point, I can already tell that the game has a smart saving system. For games like this, you can save whenever you want and how often you want. I see this as a major positive, where some of the scenes will just have you clicking on things in a specific order. I find it very accessible for me not to having to repeat the whole process if I end up failing. You do some mundane tasks about looking for certain items and checking up on certain characters. At this point, the game introduces an overlaying map with accessible features to them as well. You can travel to multiple locations, but your character usually tells you when you don't need to go somewhere, and other characters at the location usually tells you really quickly if you need to be here or not. I find this a welcoming thing to a point and click game, where you could just wander around for hours at a time. The game keeps you in the pocket of what you're supposed to be doing at most times. After deciding where a vase or whatever the frick is supposed to be sent for researching, I go back to the university at Helen's own request. She wants to have a nap. Oh yeah, that vase or whatever, that's also a cryptic path in the game. Where you send that vase matters a whole lot. The game has 3 chapters in total. If you send the vase to a place where you can't visit to find it again, chapter 3 will never open on your playthrough, as far as I can tell. There are some other cryptic things like that as well. Anyway, back at the university, Helen goes back to bed after a new character, Rosen, has been a bitch to us, asking us to turn off the lights because she couldn't do it herself, even though she was in the room before us. Ugh. We wake up what I presume is a few hours later, because most people have gone home for the day. We get awoken by someone knocking on the door to the room. Open up the door and wham! Scissorman approaches behind a student just wobbling inside. This is our first introduction to the supernatural hairdresser in this game. The game tells you jack shit at this point. It's just like, run! Figure it out! So you start running randomly around in the university, not having a clue what to do. My first instinct was to find a place to hide, hoping that there was one place that Scissorman would just turn around and take the weekend off. There was. After that initial scene, it's time to get out here. But wait! The front door is closed, so you need to find another way to get out. Turns out that in the storage room, there is a door with some wires and a lock, so you need to find both pliers and the storage key to get the FO. This is where the game gets really creepy. You never know where Scissorman is at this point. The only thing you know is that you're trapped in the same building as he is in. He could be lurking around any corner. He could even be hiding in random lockers. Seems pretty strange for him to just be sitting in random lockers, waiting for someone to open it. But then again, I guess the hair business is slow these days. The part where he chases you are genuinely scary and actually managed to jump scare me at least twice during my very first playthrough. The chase music is really catchy too. You just never know when he's going to pop up. Even though the result is fairly similar every time, usually if you run back to a place where you could hide successfully one time, you can almost certainly do it again with the same result. But the plan now is the GTFO. This can't happen before Scissorman has sent you a fax though, telling you nasty things and hacked all the computers, making them go kill, kill, kill in tandem with his footsteps. Kinda neat. After finding the pliers and the storage key, you get through the back door of the storage room, out into the parking lot, and to your car. Saved! For now. Chapter 1 over. The game picks up the day after, where you're trying to tell multiple people about the situation the night prior, but no one seems to really believe you. This does however put you on a path to try to find out more about the Scissorman. Helen doesn't believe him to be human, so she starts to look around places to find out more about this mysterious hairdresser. After checking up on some people, you find out that there is this kid called Edward, also survivor of the first game and introduced in the previous chapter, who's at the library. You're headed there anyways, so you agree to check up on him as well. We head to the library and talk with the people there to be allowed to use the reading room to try to find out some more information about the Scissorman. After reading some, we can hear the bell toll in the library. One one of the headmasters at the library, states that this clock hasn't worked in ages, so we head up to the clock tower with him to check it out. The dude takes one last peek outside at the clock before getting a snappy haircut from the man himself.
Mr. Sullivan?
Sister Man is reintroduced. This time, we're closed off in the library, but with Edward. We tell Edward to go and hide while we look for a safe way to get out of here. But guess what? The front door is once again jammed. This time round, you don't always get to hide from the Sister Man. You can use certain environmental items to hurt him with. This is the chapter where sort of a weird mechanic is introduced. At certain points in the game, your cursor starts flashing. The game doesn't tell you what to do, but apparently on the PlayStation 1 version, you need to mash square to escape the situation. I did not know this. Thanks, Google. In one of the rooms, you find a small shaft that's small enough to fit Edward through. These are, however, boarded up with some screws, so we need to find a screwdriver. Hopping around the library, bumping into Sister Man in all kinds of places, you finally find a screwdriver. Take away the board and lead Edward out. After that, you head for the main door yourself, where a cutscene triggers. You hear the police sirens from the outside. Something's happening at least.
Hey, Teach, what's going on? Teach, hang in there.
This was actually where my very first playthrough ended. There was an end cutscene that resulted in both Jennifer and Helen dying by the hands of the Sister Man, ending E unlocked. Game over. Turns out there's a whole nother chapter if you found some relevant information on Sister Man, which leads you to England and whatnot, so I'm going to get around to playing that too. I just wanted to replicate my very first playthrough of the game and what it was like playing the game in 2020 for the very first time. I really enjoyed Clock Tower, way more than what I thought I would. I usually turn away from horror games where you can't defend yourself. I find them tedious, but because of the smart saving system and the nice continue system, which allows you to continue from the start of the action scene, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The scenes where Sister Man could be anywhere were genuinely scary, even in 2020. The story wasn't a home run, but still something that kept me going forward and knowing what to do. The game had a really cool way of ensuring that you were staying on point the entire time, by not throwing you off with multiple locations you can visit and walk around in for hours on end without finding anything. If you went to the police station at the wrong time, a guy at the station usually told you that they didn't have something for you at this point. I like that. Some of the gripes I have with the game is the fact that it's so cryptic. The game doesn't tell you the basic controls, how certain mundane choices matter, and a character selection screen would be welcome, but these are not huge issues. I played Clock Tower for the PlayStation 1 for the very first time in 2020. I'm eager to find some more endings for the game so that I can enjoy the third chapter, which sends me to England. After that, I'm hopping onto Clock Tower 2 and eventually 3. Hopefully, you enjoyed this bit of a different episode of Critical Eye. This time around, I spent more time just explaining my first playthrough and walking you through my experience with it all. Hopefully, that was enjoyable. If you did enjoy it, please consider showing your support in some sort of manner. Thumbs up the video, subscribe if you haven't already, or some other form of support. That's it for me. This was PrezWaste, and I'm now signing out. Goodbye. Take care of yourself and each other, and remember, I love you all. Thank you.